On this video, I'm going to continue what I had started uh, in a number of videos previously, working my way through the book of Hebrews, reading the Greek text, and analyzing the grammar as we go through it, along with a running commentary. We have worked our way up to verse 14 of chapter 2, in which the writer of Hebrews is setting forth Christ as the pioneer of our salvation, who has cut the way through the thicket of death and become our pathfinder. Now we continue that, unlike angels, he was made a little lower than the angels in the incarnation to effect, by the grace of God, a redemption, that he might taste death on behalf of us who believe, of all who believe, let me say. And believers are now one with Christ. And he quotes Psalm 22 and Isaiah 8 to show that oneness. I will declare your name among my brethren. And Christ did after the resurrection. And then, behold, I will be confident in him. Behold, I and the children which God has given to me. Isaiah becomes a type, and his children, of Christ and his children, the church. So he's showing the oneness that Christ has accomplished. And he's going to go on to talk about how he became flesh that he might conquer death for believers on our behalf. So I'm at verse 14, and it reads, Epe unta paidia ke koinoneken chaimatas kai sarkas kai autas paraplesios meteskin ton auton kenadiatu thanatu katargese tan ta kratas ekanta tu thanatu tut estin tan diabolon. Since the children have participated of flesh and blood, he likewise partook of the same, in order that through death he might render inoperative the one who is having the power of death, that is, the devil. Since the children, that would be all who believe, believers, humans, have partaken of flesh and blood. Kekoinoneken is from koinao, which means to participate, to take part in. From the, it's a perfect, indicative, active, third person singular from koinoneo. So since the children have participated, perfect, indicative, active, third person singular from koinoneo, of blood and flesh. In other words, since the children, believers, are human, blood and flesh, he likewise, parapleseos is an adverb, he likewise, metaskein, of the same, partook of the same. This is the aorist indicative active third person singular from meteko, to partake. So he likewise partook of the same. In other words, Jesus became human, is the idea. And he partook of the same along with us as human beings. That's the thought here, I believe. And like I said, this is the aorist indicative active, third person singular from the word meteko, to share in or to have a part in. So he likewise partook of the same, becoming human, in order that, here's a purpose clause, hena diatu thanatu katargese, in order that through death he might render inoperative. This is from katargeo. It is the aorist subjunctive, third person singular from katargeo, that he might render inoperative the one who is having the power of death. Tan takratas ekanta. Ekanta is a present participle, active participle, accusative singular from echo. And it's going back to the definite article ton in the accusative. So that he might render inoperative the one who is having the power of death, that is the devil. In other words, Jesus came and became human and conquers death and defeats death through his death and resurrection on behalf of believers, on behalf of those who are set apart through faith in him. Then he goes on in verse 15, Kai apalaxe tutus, chasoi phabo thanatu diapantos tu zain enakoi esan douleas. That is, and that he might reconcile them, as many as by the fear of death, dia pantas tu zain. I'm going to render this through all of their living, or through all of life, they were liable of bondage of that fear of death. And that's the human race that Christ has conquered death for, especially for those then that have a faith in him. It becomes effective in a effectual sense in that regard. Notice that he might reconcile. Apalaxe is from apalasso. We're looking at an aorist subjunctive third person singular from apalasso, that he might free those, bring deliverance to them, as many as in the fear of death, dia panta, through all to live, literally, were liable through all of their living. Notice here, dia takes the genitive in pantas, and tu, zain, is a genitive use of the infinitive, the present active infinitive from zao. Through all of their living, they were liable of bondage. In other words, the bondage of the fear of death. Asan is the imperfect indicative active third person plural from ami. So they were liable all through life because of that fear of death. And then he continues to describe how he's helping the seed of Abraham, not angels. Ugar depu angelon epilambanatai ala spermatas Abraham epilambanatai. For not, of course, is he helping angels. Epilambanatai is your present indicative middle third person singular from epilambano. He's not helping angels, but the seed of Abraham, believers, epilambanatai, which would be present indicative, both of these, middle, third person singular from epilambano. Whence, as a result, Hathen, Ophelin, Katapantatois adelphois, Homoiothenai, whence it was fitting or necessary from Ophelo, it's the imperfect indicative active third person singular. It was necessary, according to all things, to be made like to the brethren. Homoiothenai is from homoieo. It's the aorist passive infinitive. You think of luthenai, aorist passive infinitive of homoieo. to be made like to the brethren, in order that he might become a faithful high priest with reference to the things of God. Notice with the result, we could say he was made like, it was fitting that he be made like to the brethren, in order that he might become. Genetai is the aorist subjunctive middle, third person singular from genomai, that he might become uh, faithful, a faithful or a merciful and faithful high priest with reference to the things of God, eis ta hilasgestai, to make satisfaction or propitiation for the sins of the people. Another infinitive, the present middle infinitive from hilasgamai, to make satisfaction or to make propitiation for the sins of the people. Christ provides that satisfaction, that propitiation by what he has accomplished. In hogar pepanthen autas perastheis, for in which he has suffered being tested. Pepanthen is from peitho, it's the perfect indicative active third person singular. For in that he has suffered being tempted. Perastheis is from perazzo, it's the present passive participle nominative masculine singular from perazzo. Being tempted, then he is able, dunatai, present indicative middle from dunamai, he is able to those who are being tempted, tois peratsamenos. Here we have the dative participle, masculine plural, to those who are being, dative passive participle, masculine plural from perazzo. So he is able to those who are being tested ba athesai, to help, from ba atheo, the aorist active infinitive. So he is able to help those who are being tested. For in which he has suffered being tested, from pasco, I should say. Pepanthen is from pasco, to suffer. For in which he has suffered, perfect indicative active from pasco, in which he has suffered, is the way I need to translate this, being tested. From perazzo, he is able to those who are being tested to help, from ba a sao. So what this text seems to be saying, in my understanding, is that Christ became human, yet without sin, as the perfect God-man. And he suffered. In having suffered, and that's a completed action with results continuing into the present, the use of the perfect here from Pasco, having suffered by being tested, by his testing, by being tested and tried, then he is able to help those who are being tested. And it's an encouragement to the writers or to the readers of this book to press on with Jesus Christ. And it's an encouragement to us today. As we look at life, and the older we get, I read this and I say, thank you, Lord, that you were willing to become human, yet without sin, and as the God-man, to be tested and go through death and deliver us from that death. It doesn't mean that we don't have a certain fear of death. I think we do. But we have the good news that Jesus Christ has conquered death. and delivered us from that final fear of death, knowing death is still an enemy, but knowing that he has conquered it. That's a wonderful, wonderful reassurance that we as believers in Jesus Christ can have.